All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I am here with a very good friend, Mark Hansen. Mark, how are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing really well. Really well. How about you?
Awesome, man. Glad to hear it. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for taking some time to come on the show today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm really glad to be here and really glad that you asked me to be on here. It's an honor.
Of course, of course. So, Mark, fellow Chippewa, so CMU
Fire up,
graduate,
Chips.
fire up chips. He did his undergrad at Central, and that's actually how him and I originally met. And then he also did his master's at Central. So he's a Chippewa through and through, just like me. And during the time that I met Mark and that I've known him, he's always been really passionate about science and research, and that's kind of taken him into his professional career now, where he does research. He's doing research out on the East Coast for tuberculosis, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's a little bit kind of like the basics about Mark, but do you mind kind of talking a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. Guess I'll start back in the beginning. Just a small town Michigan boy up from small town in northern Michigan, so really closer to Canada than any of the other states.
Yeah.
But excuse me. Let's see. No, I stayed pretty close to my hometown throughout most of my time growing up. And then once college hit, came down to Central Michigan University, which was about an hour and a half south of where I was. So it's kind of like my first step kind of out from where I grew up, just kind of see
Mhm.
a little more of what's out there. And, we started college at the same time. We were there undergrad for 4 years. And then, yeah, I stayed for an extra 2 years for my master's. And after that point, decided that, I'm going to jump out of Michigan, and I ended up in New Jersey,
Yep.
of all places. It was unexpected, didn't really know where I would be going or what would be happening. Because actually, at the time, my fiance and I, we had both kind of thought that, we want to experience something outside of the Midwest. And
Hmm.
as I was finishing my degree, I figured, if I could find a position somewhere else, that would be a really great opportunity to live somewhere else for a couple of years, few years, kind of just play it as we go along and see how long we ended up out here. And move once, move twice, we'll see.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I know that just like from knowing you personally, yeah, Michigan's always been home. And I don't know. I mean, you kind of strike me not in a bad way or anything, as like kind of like a Midwest kind of guy, like, kind of small
Through and
towns. You're
through.
you're a really simple guy, you're not, you don't need to be, in flashy cities, or you're not like I need to buy like the most flashy clothes or cars or watches or anything. You're a pretty basic guy, pretty simple guy. So yeah, like I definitely could see you going back to the Midwest, but at the same time, like you said, I think now is like a good time at our age to kind of like see what else is out there. And it sounds like, you've had a good experience out in Jersey. I mean, of course, that's, your job is out there, but also, I mean, it seems like you're enjoying just like kind of living on the East Coast a bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a very different pace of life compared
Yeah.
to the Midwest. I'm sure as people who live out here know it's much more, it's a faster pace. And
Hmm.
I feel that it was kind of nice that we ended up being where we are. We're maybe 12 miles from New York City. I can actually see a little bit of the skyline from my window here, which is really cool, just to tell you how close to the city we are.
Yeah.
And it's let us, my now wife and I, Catherine, just kind of figure out, that we really enjoy being out here. It's a lot of fun. It's very different, like all the food options.
Yeah.
Everything's walkable, which is awesome. But I kind of listen to like this is a lot of fun, but it's not where we will spend like the rest of our lives. Kind of
Hmm.
like a brief stint out here, and like you were saying, like the timing was great, at least in
Yeah.
terms of age. The pandemic has made things a little difficult. We moved out here in September 2020 when
Mm.
things were still kind of unknown in regards to what was happening with the pandemic, and vaccines hadn't been created yet. So it was an odd time to move.
Yeah.
So we weren't really able to break into like the full bustle of the city because it was not shut down, but it was
Right.
it was dampened compared to what it would be. And as we've been out here now a year and a half, it's kind of come up a little more lively, and we've gotten to see more and more of it.
It's good. Yeah. I mean, it's of course been a weird, couple of years for everyone, everywhere you look and everywhere
Oh
you
yeah.
go. But I mean, it's unfortunate that it does kind of take away some time or experiences or opportunities from us. And, granted, we're lucky to be in good health and, take,
Hmm.
have our family in good health, and there's procedures and vaccines now and stuff like that. So definitely, we're very grateful for what we have, but at the same time, I definitely think it's tough, right? Like we missed out on some things, and you mentioned kind of moving during the pandemic when there's still kind of that question mark, and um, you mentioned fiance, now wife. So yeah, for everyone listening, Mark got married during the pandemic. So congratulations to Mark on that.
Thank
But
you.
again, one of those things that's kind of weird. Like you can't really have that true wedding experience per se, or maybe the wedding that you thought you would have, or maybe planned before the pandemic because of it. So, you know, I think that with anything, there can be some good that even comes out of bad situations, but I think that it has been challenging. And, I'm glad to hear that now you kind of are having a little more time to, enjoy kind of like the move, and just kind of explore a little more around your new area.
Yeah, and just kind of taking what life gives us and
Yeah,
making the most out of it. Just do what we can
definitely.
with it.
Definitely. So, Mark, when it comes to kind of college and your degree and your job and everything, from pretty much the beginning of like when I can think of knowing you, it seems like you've been on a pretty, straight track of like trajectory of, I want to study this and then do this and that and kind of go through a path. And I know that I want to say maybe like in grad school, you kind of had that like, kind of like fork in the road of like, I have like a general idea of where I want to go, but like, do I want to do research? Do I, kind of which path you want to take? So talk a little bit about that if you don't mind. Like, how did
Yes.
like did you know you
Excited
wanted to
to.
do this like in high school or like as a child
Let's
or
see. From what um, what I know and what I can remember, like I've always been surrounded by science and nature. Like I grew up on 60 acres of land, most of that being woods and rivers,
yeah.
and just that in itself was an incredible upbringing. I absolutely loved it, being able to just kind of be out there in nature, to be able to walk along the trails and see everything from deer to turkeys to possum, coyotes, bear, occasionally just anything and everything out there, just being surrounded by nature.
Yeah.
And I've always enjoyed nature itself and science in general. And I'd say, I guess, more so started to focus on biology. Let's say probably early high school.
Okay.
I had just like my first like general biology course in there my freshman year, and then I turned to chemistry sophomore year. But then let's see, I ended up taking advanced placement biology my senior year, which I really enjoyed. It's kind of getting like a more in-depth education on some of the basics of biology.
Hmm.
And let's see. Oh, actually, my junior year, I had taken a medical occupations class.
Okay.
It's kind of like an introduction to like a human anatomy physiology course.
Okay.
And that got me interested on the medical side of science. And then the
Okay.
next year, I took the medical occupations class, which actually got us into the hospital and different healthcare systems
Mm.
for like 2 days out on like 10 different rotations. So we kind of got to experience a lot of different sides of healthcare. And at that point, I was really enjoying that, and seeing the health care provider roles and thinking, oh, maybe I want to do something more in that field. And at the time, I'd also taken an introduction to engineering class, which I really enjoyed. So in my mind, I was kind of mixing the two together. It's like, what about like biomedical engineering? Was actually
Mm.
a thought initially my senior year of high school. But as I progressed through that medical occupations class, I started leaning more towards surgery.
Yeah.
Being still really young and ambitious, I'm going to be a trauma surgeon. This sounds exciting. It's going to
Yeah.
be different every day. I'm not really going to know what I'm going to be walking into until it's there. And that's something that I still enjoy today, is having that variety going into my job, not necessarily not knowing what's going to happen, but that it's not the exact same thing every day.
Okay.
So I had that mindset actually going into college, wanting to be a trauma surgeon, and got involved in a honors medical course, in which the goal of it, you took it once a year, and then the idea was to start to prepare you for medical school.
Right.
Freshman year, they just kind of introduced you to other people who were interested and just kind of gave you the starting grounds of what to do, what looks good on your resume, what you should be doing by your first, second, third, fourth year in college to help you prepare for that. I really enjoyed that, really enjoyed the people I was with. And then sophomore year, the second half, I got involved with undergraduate research. And I'd come across an email from a professor who was recruiting for her molecular biology lab. And I'd always had the thought that, doing research would be really cool. And for medical school, that always looks nice to have some kind of experience in
Right.
that sense. So this is a good opportunity both to learn and to, bump up my resume. I spoke with her. I was able to go through kind of like a trial period with that lab, and I was accepted. And I think that summer after my sophomore year, I came back, I think mid-June. I'd taken the first bit of that summer off to go home. I actually had to study abroad in there. And then when I came back, that second half of that summer is when I fell in love with research.
Mm.
Just kind of going through like the unknown. Again, kind of like what I wanted with the as a trauma surgeon, it's unknown what you're getting into each day. In research, you're kind of looking for the unknown. You're trying to figure out how something functions, why it does this, why a protein does that, and what provides the cell with, its energy, mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell.
Right.
But,
Yep.
man, I was so deeply in love with research in
Yeah.
that aspect. So I continued actually in that lab throughout the entirety of my undergraduate career.
Right.
And let's see, it would have been the summer after my junior year, I had an opportunity to go to a conference to present data that I had collected and worked with
Mm-hmm.
throughout the past year and a half or so. And it was actually an international meeting, which scared me a bit. I'm thinking international people from all over the world. It was
Yeah.
actually out in California, about 4 days in June. And after going there, just like the environment, the ambiance, being with all of these scientists that
Mm-hmm.
all have this love for, we worked with C. elegans, which is a microscopic nematode. It's actually
Okay.
a model organism. We call it the worm for short. But being there with 1,700 people who all loved this thing and worked with it and
Mm-hmm.
did research and found answers to basic biological questions that can be applied to people
Yeah.
was kind of unreal at the time. And looking back on it, that's when I definitely made the decision, I'm going into research. This medical thing, I'm done. No, I don't want that.
Okay.
And at that time, I was also preparing for the MCAT, which is
Yeah.
the medical college admission test. And I kind of had this internal battle. Like, do I continue going with it? Like, I've taken a course for it. Like, I take the exam in probably like a month or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then would get my score back and start applying to medical school the following fall. And I kind of felt a struggle myself. I made it sound like I just threw away medical school, but it really was a struggle to figure out what I wanted to do at that point because I loved research so much, but I had my mind set on medicine for so long.
Yeah.
I talked to, I don't know, dozens of people trying to figure out what to do, my research advisor, people,
Mm-hmm.
medical group, parents, friends, just trying to figure out what was best for me and what would make me happy. And
Mm.
I still ended up going through with taking the MCAT because it was so close, and they knew that depending on the school, I could also use it to apply to graduate school. So if I
Sure.
wanted to go for like my master's or PhD, like
Mm-hmm.
this is still useful. I'm prepared so much for it already. I might as well go through with it. So I did that. I got my score back, and this is something I actually don't tell too many people, but I will say I was actually hoping for a poor score, so that way I wouldn't feel the pressure to apply to medical school. Because if I
Yeah.
scored really well, I kind of felt like I wasted the
Mm,
opportunity if I didn't go to medical school.
yeah.
But in the
That's
end,
that's interesting.
yeah, I don't know. It was weird, like realizing I had those thoughts, I think that kind of helped point me to research, like thinking like I don't want to do well with this
Yeah.
medical college admissions test. So that means I want to do research. I mean,
Yeah.
I still did well enough time to be able to apply to graduate schools and
Sure.
be accepted as I do have my master's now, but that was kind of like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Like I
Yeah.
knew for sure then that medical school was not for me, and
Right.
I was going to go research. I was going to jump in,
Yeah.
and luckily with the lab I was in during my undergrad, I was able to accumulate about 2.5 years worth of experience,
Hmm.
and actually spoke with my advisor. And the huge reasons I stayed at Central for my master's was because I would be able to continue working in her lab
Yeah.
and have the advantage of knowing all of the basics, having done research there for 2.5 years now, and I wouldn't have to relearn things. I would
Hmm.
actually have a couple of projects that I would be able to lead lined up already, so I could jump right into it that summer before the fall semester of my
Yeah.
graduate school started. So that's what I did. It's like, this is great. I'm going to be able to jump in
Yeah.
and just take this to new levels that I wasn't able to during undergraduate, because part of grad school, the idea is to be able to do research.
Right.
So I had so much more time for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Man, yeah, as you kind of went through your story, I know, like, as your friend, I know you went through those experiences, but definitely to kind of hear, to relive it, because it has been a while, I guess. Just, time flies,
You,
but also to hear kind of like your perspective. And I mean, I had no idea, what you said about your MCAT, where, like, part of you is like, I hope I don't get that great of a score. But I think that makes sense, because I think about, like, in my life or other people I talk to, sometimes, like, when we have to make that decision, it's like, well, if we have to pick between, like, 2 pretty good, options, if one of them just doesn't work out, like, it
great. Then I could
kinda
just go
makes
with
life
the
a little
other. It's
easier.
right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But I like how you said, you really were thinking to yourself and asking people that you trusted about what would make you the happiest, career-wise. And I think that that's interesting, because I think people in that age, maybe our late teens, early 20s, when we are making those decisions, we almost feel so much external pressure. Like, my family wants me
Yeah.
to do this, or like
Oh.
my significant other, or like my professors, like they've been helping me get here, or like you mentioned, the honors, like med program kind of that you're in. Like, what will those people think, or what will those
Mhm.
faculty members think? Like, will they think I wasted their time or something? So I definitely think, like, it was good that you were able to kind of narrow it down to, like, and I'm sure, you probably did have some of those considerations, but at the end of the day, you're like, "What's important to me? Like, what will make me happy?" And I think it just goes to show that, like, it's great to have plans and to, like, plan things out and to go with it, but, like, if something else comes up, like, if you find that passion for something else, like, it's okay to change your mind, especially in college. I mean, I certainly have
Yeah.
changed my major minor several times, and
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it sounds like you kind of had that similar experience. Like, you thought you were doing one thing, and then just, not
No.
that you would have, like, probably, like, if you went to med school and, that's what you're doing, surgeon, like, I'm sure you wouldn't, like, necessarily regret it, but, you found something that really resonated with you more, and it sounds like you're super happy doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And just realizing in either option, there's the potential to advance, our knowledge or the health
Mhm.
of people. Now, in medical field, it's a little more direct, a little more obvious. Seeing, for example, like with a trauma surgeon, you're saving like that individual's life, like when they arrive,
Mhm.
doing whatever has to be done to save them, and that's an immediate direct outcome that you can see. But with research, And obviously, it's been brought a lot more to light with the pandemic, and it's kind of
Hmm.
seen like the whole process of like the vaccine creation, and just that being a little more transparent now, and just seeing what all the scientists are going through and what they do
Yeah.
in the event of a pandemic. I mean, I can even remember the like in late December 2019 when they announced the discovery of this new virus. Within, I think it was weeks, if that even, the entire genome had been sequenced, and scientists knew that, and they were able to start creating tests for it and even begin the vaccination or vaccine creation process at that point.
Yeah.
And at least in my interest in research and science, at least right now, primarily is also in human health and advancement of different either treatments or ways either for like genetic diseases or infectious diseases.
Hmm.
And that's come from actually a lot of my experiences in graduate school, where like I kind of explained before, the lab I was in was a molecular genetics
Yeah.
lab. And we focused on a couple of proteins that had a role in development.
Okay.
They allowed certain cells to develop at a certain pace, so as they were supposed to. And we'd mutate a certain gene, we would see defects, and all of this could be translated over into humans, where the gene in the C. elegans that we were working with has what they call an ortholog, or just essentially it's the same gene but in humans rather
Okay.
than in the worm. And mutations in this gene cause different defects in like blood cell development. So there are these parallels between them, and we were trying to figure out how it functioned in this more basic system to help understand how it can function in a more advanced system, such as people.
Mm. Okay.
So that was kind of more like my genetics
Yeah.
side, that interest. And then I also was a teaching assistant for a medical microbiology course,
Right.
which I actually took in undergrad. And we learned about a bunch of different infectious diseases and the bacterium and viruses that cause them.
Hmm.
And as a teaching assistant, I did a lot of the preparation work for that class. So I'd be streaking different bacterial cultures, setting up different tests to help identify these bacteria, going through different case studies.
Hmm.
And that really sparked my interest in infectious disease, and I actually worked with that class all throughout graduate school.
Okay.
And I don't know, I was trying to think of ways either to like combine those or to find a career that would at least be able to take one of those passions
Yeah.
at the time. And like you said, with my current job now, it works with tuberculosis and advancing the drug treatments that they have for it. I kind of took the microbiology side, my interest, and jumped on that. Um, while tuberculosis might not actually be a big problem in the United States, there's still, I think it's almost 10 million cases per year,
Wow.
and between 1.5 and 2 million people actually die of tuberculosis every year.
Okay.
But it's just extremely non-existent in the United States. It happens much more on the other side of the world. Southeast Asia is commonplace. We see it. So it's just something I feel like a lot of people, at least here in the U.S., forget about and
Yeah.
think, oh, that's old. Like that's 1800s. You see it in the old Victorian movies or something.
Right.
But uh,
So might be a dumb question, and I'll go on record to say I'm not a science person, never have been. Bio was the bane of my existence in high school and college. Um, but hopefully someone listening is like me and may not know tuberculosis. Obviously heard of it a lot, but like you said, it is kind of something that happened like was more prevalent maybe a long time ago. So can you kind of explain like the summarization of what it is or what it does or how it impacts
absolutely.
someone?
Yes. The causative agent or the bacteria that causes tuberculosis is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. That's the
Okay.
full scientific name. And as the name implies, it's a bacteria. And what happens is when you inhale it, the bacteria travel typically to the the far ends of your lungs into the little alveoli, which are the little air sacs that actually
Yep.
allow for the exchange of oxygen between your lungs and blood. They'll go really far down
Mhm.
into there. And it actually only takes, I think, 5 to 10 bacteria to cause an infection,
Mm.
which in terms of most infectious agents, that's an incredibly small number. Most
Okay.
of the times it's hundreds or thousands.
Okay.
But this bacteria is incredibly persistent. But what happens is once it's in your lungs, the immune system will attack it. It will actually try to eliminate the bacteria, but when some of the cells actually eat the bacteria, it's able to survive within them and then it actually grows. It kind of builds itself a little shell essentially inside.
Okay.
It grows and multiplies within that cell, and then it can rupture, which creates a huge spread of bacteria within your lungs now.
Mm.
And then that forms kind of a larger structure that might get encased. So then it's just a massive bacteria in your lungs
Gotcha.
in what they call a tubercle, which is kind of where the name tuberculosis comes from.
Mhm.
And then from there, actually, it can go one of two ways. Those tubercles can just sit in your lungs and it won't really affect you. You won't really notice. And this actually happens, I think it's in about 90% of people who get infected.
Mhm.
It sits there, but it's latent, they
Okay.
call it. So it's not causing any symptoms,
Yeah.
but the bacteria is inside you. However, some people, whether it be another infection, or they become immunocompromised by something, or even just stress or a change in hormones,
Mhm.
cause these bacteria to, the immune system suddenly interacts with them differently. It causes them essentially to be released.
Mm.
And then at that point, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of bacteria in your lungs.
Yeah.
They've been released from those tubercles, and then you cough them out because now it's just kind of a fluid in your lungs.
Right.
Your body will cough that out, and with that comes hundreds of thousands of bacteria. And at that point, it can kind of continue to build up in your lungs, and
Yeah.
the bacterium itself is also extremely drug resistant. So most treatments take six, I think it's like 4 to 6 months now.
Mhm.
Some of them take 9 months,
Wow.
and that's with a number of drugs. So
Yeah.
it can be pretty nasty.
It sounds like it. Yeah. Man, that's yeah, it's crazy to think about that. And, like you said, it doesn't seem to be too prevalent in the US, currently. But definitely just to hear the statistic you mentioned about like how many people just globally are impacted by it. It's like, wow, that's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of brought me just like a new realization. I was like, oh yeah, like remember we learned about tuberculosis in our medical microbiology class, but it
Hmm.
wasn't something we covered inten intensely because it's not much of a problem here anymore. That's not something you
Right.
commonly come across somebody in the United States with, but it
Right.
kind of brought me kind of a new appreciation of all diseases around the world, not just those
Definitely.
that are more likely to impact us.
Right. Yeah. Totally. I like that kind of like more global approach. And this, I feel like this might be an interesting question, and you might have zero input on it or kind of like background or anything on it, or maybe you do have some kind of insight to share. And I'm just kind of randomly curious. So, you know, of course, like if you think of cancer, that's something that probably everyone, listening has knows someone who has been impacted by cancer at some point. And I think like we always hear like, we need a cure for cancer. Like, why isn't there a cure for cancer? And, we're in 2022 where I'm assuming like, technology and science and research and, everything is at its max. But like, I guess like the question is like, why are there things like cancer? There's probably several other things that I just don't know of that like we can't find a cure for. We can't find like well, I mean, I guess there's treatment, but like, a treatment that maybe will cure it for good. I mean, like, is it just that it's so hard to study these kind of diseases or things, or like I guess do you have any like insight on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a part of it is just the nature of, I guess, what you're studying. I can't speak too much directly,
Sure.
like cancer wise. I don't have too much research experience with it.
Right.
I mean, with the knowledge that I have in general science, I do know that with cancer, it's usually a combination of a lot of factors.
Hmm.
It can definitely have a genetic component, but it can have environmental components. And in every person, I mean, they don't know why, no, probably will never know why, but everybody's body kind of, although they do obviously very similar things. We all breathe, eat, talk, like
Right.
that kind of thing, but deep down at the molecular side of things with the genes and proteins, people's bodies will respond to the same stress or antigen or bacteria, infection, whatever, in different ways.
Right.
Like with cancer, like it can be caused by so many different things, whether it be a combination of somebody smoked for a couple of years and now they live somewhere with a high UV exposure, and like if they have or have not a genetic history of cancer, or somebody who's never had any of that
Right.
but can still develop cancer. There's just so many components, so many pieces to the puzzle
Yeah.
that unfortunately there's just too much to be able to solve with.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like there's just so much variability and like it depends like person to person that like there's not really
Mhm.
like I mean, even if you study, a group of 100 people and find something that, maybe cures those 100 people like that, there's not even like the slightest guarantee that it's going to have the same impact on another 100 people, right? Like it's just
Exactly, yeah.
okay.
And actually, that kind of reminds me of something that I know very little about, so nobody quote me on this, but
Okay.
there's a field of science, it's called host-directed therapy.
Hmm.
And I think, again, I think the basics of that is to have the body, like your own body, respond to whatever may be afflicting you, whether it be an infectious disease or cancer or something, and essentially being able to tweak that individual's immune system to respond in a certain way to whatever, I guess, problem or issue that there is.
Hmm.
And in that case, because it's that person's own body that they're trying to not necessarily alter, but to get a response from,
Hmm.
I think the idea is that in theory, the treatment will at least be improved because it's that person's own body is creating a response, and
Mm.
therefore like, it should work in
Okay.
theory more so for whatever affliction they have.
Right. Interesting.
But yeah, that's something I don't know really anything about. I've read about it a few times and across
Right.
some articles and that, but
Okay. Very interesting. And, as you know, move forward in your career and everything, like, do you think research, infectious disease research, that's kind of like the path that you want to stay on? Or do you think like maybe you want to research other fields or other topics in the field, or do you have no idea?
it feels so open just because of how much there is.
Yeah.
I think, let's see, I know I've talked before about kind of like my idea of like of genetics.
Hmm.
There's still definitely a part of me that wants to kind of go back towards that side of research and look more at different genetic diseases, such, or at least genetic causes of some diseases, such as like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Yeah.
I think would be really interesting, at least to
Okay.
me. And
Yeah.
I've a little bit of family history, at least with Parkinson's. My great grandmother on my
Mm.
mom's side, she had Parkinson's at least as long as I knew her.
Mm.
And I just kind of seeing the way she was, and hearing stories like from my mom and her mom, just
Yeah.
about what my great grandma was like before that, before she was diagnosed, before she had symptoms.
Hmm.
Just wish I had been able to meet her at that time, but it's kind of given me a bit of a drive to look more towards diseases such as that, which I still carry with me, and I think would be really interesting and
Yeah.
beneficial to look into. But on the flip side, being in infectious disease also increased my interest in that, just realizing how many infectious diseases there are out there. Of course, with the pandemic, that's brought up the idea of, kind of what's next, and the whole
Yeah.
idea of the zoonotic diseases, which spill over from animals into humans. I read a couple of books about that, and just looking more on like the epidemiology side of things is
Yeah.
really, at least for me, really, really cool too. So it feels like it's an pretty open path still. I would like to be able to still go in one direction or the other.
Hmm.
And kind of with that, actually, while I've been at my job currently, I've had a number of people ask me if I'm going to pursue a PhD.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that at some point I would like to do,
Okay.
but I feel like until I can jump a little more into a certain field,
Yeah.
I'd like to wait because with a PhD, it's pretty specialized in a certain field. So I'd like it to be in something I know I want to stay in for a while.
That makes sense.
At least like, more than just like the 3, maybe 4 years that I'll spend out here.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
No, that I think
it's
that's
open.
yeah, I think you're in a good place where you have found a lot of passion and interest in, what you're doing with infectious disease. And, you've always kind of had that interest in genetics. So, like you can go that way, you can stick with kind of where you're at. And just research is so broad that really, you could go so many different directions with it. And I mean, like, we're sitting here right now, but maybe like I mean, God forbid, but maybe like 6 months from now, there's like something else like just like blows up or comes out of nowhere. And then, you're like, wow, this is super fascinating or something. Or maybe there's just more of a need to, identify or do research on this new phenomenon. And you're like, well, why not me? Why don't I, or my team or whatever. So I think, with most things in the world, like technology and everything, like science is always evolving, and it's always building off of
Absolutely.
principles that are already established, but it's always changing and things change day to day. And I mean, as everyone listening can probably attest with the pandemic, things have changed daily, weekly, month. It's you
Yeah, which
just
unfortunately can be so frustrating.
yeah,
Both, and I've seen it like both from the public side and from the research side. Hearing just like the different recommendations from like the CDC or the WHO, and then being a researcher, and even excuse me, within my field, we have certain projects or experiments. They go one way, and then they go
mhm,
another way, and then we or switch this or that, and science can be very frustrating.
yeah,
I'll be the first to admit that. But there's also those days when you finish up some big experiment or analysis, you can get your final results and you see, like between these two treatments, this one is greatly improved, or you have this outcome, you find something new undiscovered. It's an elation.
yeah.
It's an incredible feeling.
I love it. That's awesome. It makes
So
it worth it.
yeah, just have to remember some of those
Yeah,
down days that there's some up days coming up.
definitely. So, Mark, we've talked a lot about your kind of educational journey and the decision process of going from med school to into research, and certainly your career now. And with it all, you're busy. You're doing very serious work. So, outside of work, when it comes to maybe trying to decompress or just enjoy your time outside of doing research and stuff, what other kind of passions are you up to these days?
Let's see. Uh, Biggest one, and one that I've kept up since college, but have actually gotten much more into, is running. I
Okay.
run probably 3 or 4 mornings of the week before work.
Cool.
I'm an early riser, so I'll get up and I'll just get out there and get going.
Mhm.
And that's been, it's such a great way, at least for me, to, I guess, kind of just let my mind go. I don't really have to focus on my thoughts on anything too much in particular. It's kind of just like taking one step after another, getting a breathing rhythm,
Mhm.
and just kind of watching for cars is one of the biggest things. There's a lot more cars out here than Michigan, so
Yeah.
it can be a little dicey at times, but I don't have to. think about science or
Hmm.
uh, sometimes actually I do though. It kind of lets my mind wander really in any direction.
Yeah.
And when I set off for a run, I don't have, like a checklist or the idea is like, oh, I want to think about this or think about that.
Hmm.
I'll do my best to just kind of let my mind wander, which
Mm.
is, I feel like, especially with work, I don't have that opportunity
Right.
because I have to stay focused on whatever procedure or experiment that I'm doing or the data I'm analyzing.
Hmm.
So it really helps get me in just like an open, free mind. And because I do it before work, it kind of lets me go into it with just a really great uplifted feeling.
Yeah, kind of just feeling like
I just get
fresh.
running, and my mind's just free and open. I feel like it really helps with that.
I love
And
that.
something that's also really encouraged me to step up my game. It's called step up my game, but just like to increase um, my, I guess not intensity, but just like my dedication to running
Okay.
is actually the passings of one of my best friends who I think you actually knew, Alec
Yeah.
Esparza,
Hmm.
who, God, it's been, I think, 10 months,
Yeah,
something
I
like
was gonna say I
that.
think it's coming up on a year.
Yeah, he was a dedicated runner through and
Yeah.
through. He was on Central's running team,
Yeah.
on their track team, and I actually
Yeah.
lived with him for 2 years, and he was one of my best friends. And
Yeah.
just seeing his passion and love for running, among other things, has really given me something to keep striving for and keep going through. And no matter how, usually, no matter how I feel on those mornings, waking up, if it's pitch black and I'm tired, I'm still like, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna go for this run, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna feel great.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's it's a sad thing to think about, and you know, great kid, great guy, super funny, but super dedicated to running, and like you said, on the running team here at CMU. So I think it's awesome that you're able to kind of just celebrate and remember.
Yeah, I mean, every
The
time I
win.
put on my running shoes, it helps me think of Alec, and
Yeah.
and just it always gives me just like a positive view on him, and
Hmm.
it just kind of makes me know that he's still there in some sense, and that
Right.
you know always always be there in memory. And
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And I mean, I think running it's a great thing to do, kind of like you said, to, I've talked to people that run, and like it's like you said, kind of like you let your mind wander and go in different directions. And then I've talked to some people that are like, I kind of just like meditate, like running is almost like meditative for me. And it's just like I'm like my mind is just like focused on one thing, like my breath or something, and it's kind of like relaxing and calming. So I think running can be a great thing. I've never been into running, but I'm actually I
uh,
told myself this summer I'm gonna try to run and see
yeah,
see if I can get into it. But no, I mean it's a great thing for your health, and I think mentally too it can be great. And I love that personally for you. You have that kind of personal um drive, if you will, to or like motivation to do it, to honor a really close friend. So no, I appreciate you sharing that.
yeah. And then flip side of things, something I actually just started
Hmm.
that I'm actually deeply enjoying is bouldering. So
Okay.
it's an indoor rock climbing. At least I do it indoor, but
Hmm.
without the belay and
Yep.
rope system. And it's climbing walls there, maybe like 14, 15 feet high, but just doing it without any attachments. And at least the gym that I've gone to a few times now, there's just, they probably have 60, 70 routes within there.
Hmm.
And it's just kind of going in like you just have yourself, your body, and you see the route that the different colored rocks that you're supposed to climb. And
Right.
I kind of go through it almost like a more like an analytical way at first, like kind of figure out where I'm going to go, different hand placements, what I'll do
Hmm.
after I get to one point and then the next point, and then just kind of the next step is to go and do it. And
Yeah.
it's kind of it is a lot of fun going through, kind of following through the steps that I've come up with, and
Right.
then reaching the top and being like, yeah, I was able to climb that. Or if I don't, if I fall or I'm not able to make the next climb, kind of shake it off, reanalyze,
Hmm.
and figure out what's the next step. And it's a very different
Yeah.
exercise than running, which
Right.
I enjoy.
So through like your time bouldering or just like in general, when you think about doing it, is there has there ever been any sort of like mental barrier for you? Like because like you said, you're not, there's no belay, you're not like attached to anything. Like, is that something that you had to like overcome, or that you still are like, oh my gosh, like I could fall right now? Or like, I mean, how have you felt like with that?
Let's see. I've never. I guess when I was younger, wasn't. I wasn't terrified of heights, but I wasn't a fan of them.
Okay.
And then I've gone rock climbing a few times, but more in the traditional indoor sense with probably like 30-foot wall with the rope and belay system.
Hmm.
And during those times, never had too much problem, obviously, because like, oh, if I fall, I've got this rope.
Right.
But it was different. I had actually talked to one of my really good friends from high school about bouldering because he's done that for quite a while now, and he's actually done outdoor bouldering
Huh.
as well. He's really cool, and just kind of got his input on it, and that was a little more like just kind of go into it and trust the system
Hmm.
that they have set up because at least at my gym they're set up, they probably have at least foot thick pads, maybe foot and a half thick pads below. They're pretty soft, and one of the first things they actually talked about there was how to fall if you
Okay.
are falling, and just the idea of like tucking your chin in so you protect your head and neck, and trying to just disperse your energy as you fall. Don't like fall on one or two points, kind of spread
Right.
it out.
Mm.
And actually, fun fact, in college, I took a hop keto course, which is a Korean self-defense course. And I actually
Okay.
followed through that probably about 2 years. Actually, was able to do it in graduate school as well. And during that, there was quite a bit of work that had to do with either falling,
Hmm.
rolling, or different throws. If
Yeah.
you were actually interacting with somebody in
Right.
self-defense, I was like, what would you do?
Hmm.
Essentially, the entire idea of Hapkido is to get yourself away from that situation and then to defend yourself if you need to. And we learned, how to fall during that, and how to disperse the energy that might
Yeah.
come at our bodies. So I'd had that going into it. And then while I was working on some of the lower points on the walls, the person I was working with was like, at this point, like just jump off and fall. So, I kind of went through the early steps of doing it from a low height to just
Yeah. Kind of
do do it.
like dip
To
your
know
feet
that
in the
it,
water, dip your toes in the
yeah, to
water.
know that it's okay. Like if I fall, I
Yeah.
won't get hurt because I've done it before.
Yeah.
Which is paid off because actually the last time I fell a lot closer to the top, I was able to kind of like tuck and roll and spread
Right.
it out and
Well, that's good.
popped at that. And I was like, all right, I'm good. I can fall from almost anywhere now and I'll be fine.
There you go.
I've kind of
It,
got that mindset, and it's like, all right, I feel better about this.
it's weird because as I'm sitting here and hearing you talk about that, I just like think I can't help but think like it sounds like such a good analogy for life. Like in life we don't have like a restraint or something holding us back, and we're probably gonna
Right.
fall, and sometimes we fall when we're right at the top, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we fall when we're down low, but it's kind of like working your way, like kind of like you said, like preparing yourself, like knowing the right way, quote unquote, to fall. Or I think it's one of those things, like in life we get knocked down, we got to get back up. And I don't know,
Exactly.
like when you're saying that, I was like, that's such a good life analogy.
Yeah, you're right. I agree 100% with you on that. Because yeah, like with falling either in rocks or in real life,
Mhm.
sometimes you're going to, other times you don't. But
Exactly.
yeah, I agree absolutely that when you do fall, I mean, yeah, it's possible that you might get hurt. in
Yeah.
a physical sense, mental sense, financial, whatever be the reason. But to know that, yeah, you have to. Next step is to get up, and
Hmm.
typically, like bouldering, you're probably the only one, or maybe with a small group, you have one or two people to help pick you up. But to kind of break that out into the bigger world, like you have friends and family that will
Hmm.
be there to help pick you up. Like it doesn't have to be on your own.
Exactly.
And
And
there's nothing wrong with having other people help you. That's what they're there for. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, 100%. And I think that I've rock climbed. I've never done bouldering, but like I can imagine that, especially with bouldering, like if you fall, then you kind of learn from your fall. Like you learn, okay, so I probably shouldn't go that way,
exactly.
or
Yeah.
like, and I think again translates to life. Like even when we fall, we get back up and we learn from, well, we hopefully learn from it, and
Mhm.
maybe next time we can mitigate it a little bit or take a different approach to it. So,
Mhm.
I definitely I like that, and I like how you said, with this analogy, like we have people in our lives, and that's like what friends and family are for. And I think that, like, sometimes we think, you know, we we don't want to burden our friends or family about like when we fall down, but that's what they're for. And I'll be the first to attest that through the time that I've known Mark, he's been a terrific friend and someone that I know, like, if I fall down, with something, he's someone I can count on. And I think it's important to understand that that's like the purpose of making connections with people. They're not just there for like our good moments.
Mhm. Yeah. True. And of course, not all of your friends are there for every moment, but
Sure.
you certainly have those people who are there for the good and the bad. And
Hmm.
mm,
Definitely. So, kind of in that vein a little bit, through the time that I've known you, you've been, I would say, like 98% of the time that I've known you, you've been really positive. You've been a pretty like happy, upbeat kind of guy. You're always someone that was like willing to help others out, academically, you know, I feel like you were one of the few people in undergrad who had a car. So you're like, oh, I'll drive. Um, like, is that just you to a core, or like, I mean, did the positivity, like, personality come from a specific moment, like defining moment in your life, or is that just your demeanor?
I don't know. I mean, it certainly, I guess, like, to me, has felt like my natural self.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't. It's not like I wake up every day and it's like, all right, today I'm gonna be positive. It just, I guess, it kind of just is a natural way for the most part. But I mean, I certainly go through days where I'm not about even getting up out of bed, and
Sure.
it can be, just life in general can be really difficult, and
Mhm.
there are days that absolutely suck. No, usually being in like a positive mindset, and in those days it is, it's kind of difficult to even just understand what I'm going
Yeah.
through. But at those times, I know that like I have friends or family, again, kind of like you're talking about, that I can reach out
Mhm.
to even just say, like, hey, I'm having this bad day, something's going on. And I'll admit this, and it's actually been very recent, but I've actually started going to therapy. And I
Oh,
think that that is incredibly useful, not just for, like, oh, I've been feeling down about this or that, but just like kind of helping you navigate through a lot of the things that come up in life.
yeah.
And just giving, like an outside perspective, somebody who's not biased in any way, doesn't closely know you, but just has a different mindset and education
Mhm.
on certain ways to help with whatever might
Yeah.
be on your mind at the time, whether you are having a really down day, if you're feeling incredibly anxious about something, or
Mhm.
if you're scared that something's going to happen, or you
Right.
have like some kind of habit that you want to break.
Yeah.
Like therapists can be so helpful for so many things. I can't obviously say too much. I haven't been going that long, but enough different friends that I've talked to, and just in general from what I hear, that therapist can honestly be one of the best things
Yeah.
that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like there is quite sometimes a negative stigma still regarding
Yeah.
therapy,
Mhm.
and particularly, kind of from decades before, in which, oh, you need therapy and like throw you in the loony bin. Like,
Mhm.
it hasn't been looked on positively, but
Yeah.
I would say I definitely think that they should be, and like
Yeah.
advocate
No,
therapists for anyone. I think they're.
yeah. I mean, I appreciate you, sharing and being vulnerable and, sharing your experiences and everything. And I think that, you know, therapy is incredible. It's something that I think a lot of people think you have to be going through the worst time of your life to go to
Exactly,
therapy,
yeah.
but like there's so much more to it. And I mean, you could be super happy and living the best life ever, and you could have, the perfect family and, the perfect job and making millions of dollars and be super happy, but you could still benefit from going to therapy and talking about things. Because I think that in addition to helping, you know, when you are struggling or going through things, it can also be super proactive to, come up with proactive strategies or to stay,
Mhm.
feeling the good if you're feeling good. So, I mean, I definitely am a big advocate for it too. And, someone that spent 4 years studying psychology, like, I'm super passionate about it. And, um, like you said, it's kind of unfortunate there is that kind of negative stigma towards it. And I think that probably, like, the generation under us, are kind of I think our generation maybe a little more so are we kind of started talking about things like therapy and mental health, and then
Mhm.
the younger generation has been more, like, a little more vocal, and I think that that's kind of the
Yeah,
trend, like,
absolutely. Mhm. It's
the
becoming more
younger.
and more
Yeah, it's coming more and more
acknowledged,
normalized, and
even more or less. Yes.
I think it's so important, especially like we kind of talked about earlier, when you think back to the last couple of years. I mean, that's impacted everyone and some
Mhm.
differently than others. But at the end of the day, I mean, I would definitely say it's probably a point of trauma for most people. So like I think that now more than ever, is the time to talk to someone, and of course, talk to your friends and family, and that's great, and I encourage you to do that, but
And it
they're
works.
not, a trained professional, right? They're not a licensed practitioner, so don't feel like speaking to someone that is, licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, counselor, that it makes you, weak, or it means there's something wrong with you, or you're crazy. It's super, super important. And I mean, it should be a normal thing that, you know,
Yeah, and for the most part, it will only benefit you.
yeah.
It's not necessarily true for everyone. There, sometimes it doesn't work out,
Mhm.
but overall, it should benefit you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, again, coming from someone that has studied, the field intently, like, if you're listening and you've tried it and it didn't work, like, that's not a reflection of you or anything. That's not anything wrong with you. I mean, I think it's
Absolutely.
like, you know, it's okay to seek out different counselors or different therapists. It's not that they're a bad therapist, or it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just you need to find the right fit, and it's okay to kind of just like put yourself out there and try different places or different therapists and stuff. But yeah, like you said, it's something that really I think you can only benefit from, and if you really don't think you can, at least give it a try, because you never know. And if it doesn't work for you, then that's okay too. At least you can say that you've tried.
Yeah, and it actually makes me think about something else that I said a while back, just
Mhm.
relating to like how everybody's kind of different on like a really microscopic level, like on the genetics or molecular side. But psychology wise, everybody's a little bit different too. What works for one person doesn't work for another, and
Yeah.
something could work for 99% of people, but no, it might not work for somebody else. And in that case, we hope that, that they take initiative to look somewhere else or
Right.
try something else.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, when you said that, like, earlier in the conversation, when you're talking about everyone being different, and, like, people responding different to different treatments and stuff, one of the first things that popped in my mind was, like, mental health. There's different medications for things like anxiety, depression, and some people, they swear by a certain, prescription, and some are like, "Oh my gosh, I take that and I feel absolutely terrible. So again, it's just we're the human experience is so similar, but it's so
Yes, so
different. We're
different.
so
Yep.
different at the same time. And yeah, I think it's just understand that we're different and know that you're different. And I think that we all kind of struggle with comparing ourselves to others at times in our lives. And while that's natural and stuff, like we really are so different on genetic level, biological level, physical level, mental, emotional, spiritual level. Like we're all different. So just what works for some might not work for you, but that's okay. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong, with either party.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all different, but we're all in it together. We're all in this
Exactly.
crazy thing called life.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure out how life works, right? Like, I mean, even, us in our, mid 20s and stuff, like we've graduated, masters, awesome, whatever. But we're still trying to just figure out this thing that we call life and this human experience. And it's to anyone listening who's younger than us or our age, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not alone.
Right? That is okay. That is the norm. Even if people don't say that,
Yeah.
most people have no idea what they're doing. And people change at any point in their life still.
Hmm.
It just takes different people different amount of time to figure out either what they want to do, where they want to live, like
Exactly.
also every life decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's okay to change. And I mean, even if you're like, in your 50s and you're like, I actually don't like my job. I want to try something else, or I want to move to a different, state, whatever. You're never too old, or I guess too young to, change your mind about something. Or like, I think a lot of young professionals, I mean, like us, we might think like, oh, I've just spent like the last 3 years doing this job or with this company or in this industry. Like it's too late for me to, switch and do something I actually like. And it's not. I mean, it might seem like it, but at the end of the day, like it's kind of like one of those things where it's so much more common than we think it is in our mind. Like,
Because we look and see everyone else like, oh, they figured that out,
mhm.
this early point in their life at that point, and here I am. I feel like I haven't, but now I'm stuck in this. It just means you have to take a different path.
Yeah. And
But
there's nothing wrong about
yeah,
that. And like, if
exactly.
you think about it, like take another path, like you're going to see completely different things. You're going to have completely different experiences taking that path. Like think about literally walking, on a different path. Like, yeah, it might be different. It might be unknown. You might not necessarily know where it's going to take you, but there's, if you look for it, there's going to be a lot of beauty along the way as well.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. So, Mark, if anyone listening to our conversation today really enjoyed it, or they want to get in touch with you or reach out to you or connect with you or ask you questions or anything, is there any way that you want to like put out there that people can connect with you or anything? Like, do you have any sort of
Um,
social media you want to put out there or anything?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone at all is more than more than willing to talk to anyone about anything that they'd be interested in. And I guess I'll go with my Instagram account for an easy way of access.
Okay.
And my username is just Mark Hansen Jr. It's all one word.
Okay.
MarkHansenJr.
Perfect. All right. I will put your Instagram in the description of the episode too. So if you didn't catch it, it'll be down there. So go ahead and click down there. But yeah, I mean, Mark's a great guy. So even if you just want to talk about random stuff, he's a great person to reach out to. Or if like we talked about something that really interests you, whether it's, maybe you're thinking about med school or research, or maybe you're super passionate about infectious disease, or you're in college and you're trying to figure out how you can get in research labs or something. Mark's a great resource and someone who's very knowledgeable, and very passionate about what he does. Or, even if it's not professional stuff, but I mean, we didn't talk about it too much, but he's very much like athletic and into sports and music. So there's a lot. I definitely encourage you to reach out to Mark
Or
if
just looking for somebody new to talk to. I'm open.
exactly. Yeah. You just want
Maybe
to
let
make a
me
new
know
cool
that
thing.
you heard it through the ZAP podcast, just so that way I'm
Yes.
aware it's not just a random person. But yeah,
Yes.
I'd be more than happy to talk.
Awesome. I love it. So Mark, is there any last kind of like thoughts, message, words, anything that you want to leave the people listening with?
Oh gosh, let's see. I guess simplest thing would just be do what makes you happy. Pursue your passions. I love this podcast just in that sense. It's all about passions, and that's what gives so much meaning to life. So, yeah, pursue your passions.
I love it. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, pursue your passion. If you listen to the podcast, you know that that's what we're all about here. And, Mark certainly has followed his passions, and I would say that he's doing pretty well, and, things are going well for him. So definitely from both of us, pursue your passion, whatever that may be. Don't worry about comparing yourself to others, or, if maybe people won't understand your passion or think it's, the smart or safe choice. If it's a career or something, just do what you're passionate about. I guess be smart with it, be responsible with it, but do what you're passionate about. And as I always say, if you discover that passion and you want to talk about your passions, let me know. You can be the next guest on the podcast. But Mark, I appreciate you, as a friend first and foremost, but I also appreciate you taking the time to talk today, share a bit of your story, your background, your passions, and I have no doubt that you're going to continue to do a lot of cool things professionally and personally. And I'm honored to be able to call you a friend and watch you on that journey.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot, Zach. It's been an absolute pleasure to know you for it's almost 8 years at this point, or something like that.
Yeah, because we met
Like fall
20 fall
2014.
2014. Yeah,
It's
jeez, we're
been
old.
awesome. Oh gosh, yeah. Here we go. You've been such a great friend to me, and I've loved all the time that we've spent together, especially during undergrad, just
Yeah,
hanging out, jamming, going to the student activity center to play pickup or something like that.
I am sports.
Oh yeah,
Good times, man.
all great stuff. And it's been awesome to be on your podcast. This is something I never thought I'd be able to do. So first time for me, and I've loved
Yeah.
it.
Awesome, man. Well, I've loved having you on, and I'm sure everyone listening is gonna love, listening to this episode. So thank you again for coming on and sharing everything. And um,
Thank
you
you.
know, we'll have to do it again someday, man. When you have that next life update, we'll have to run it back. But
Sounds good to me.
awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much again. It's been great as always. And until next time, I'll catch you later.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Zach.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.